Hi, I'm Betsy Burton from the King's English Bookshop, and I'm also the mother of a son with disabilities, and I'm moderating the panel. So we're going to start with Major General Jefferson Burton, who was appointed Adjutant General of the Utah National Guard in October 2012, position of responsibility for the readiness and training of 7,300 soldiers and airmen. He previously served for 6 years in the Military Police Corps in the U.S. and in Europe, and with our National Guard in the Engineer Corps, as among other things, battalion executive officer, two-time battalion commander, and more recently, as commander of a combat battalion deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom I as part of the 1st Armored Division Task Force. Also an assistant professor of military science at BYU and Utah Valley University, he's uniquely qualified to discuss the battles to be faced and the barriers to overcome here at home by warriors who have served their country and been wounded in the process. Please welcome Major General Jefferson Burton.
Well, good morning, everybody. I guess it's still morning. I'm really honored to be with you. I always am humbled when I'm around this group, and particularly those that work with Columbus Community Center. The enthusiasm that they demonstrate in their job is just very humbling to me. The desire they have to work is very humbling to me. They understand clearly that work is love, and they love their work. And that means a lot to me. Over the last 13 years, the military has been at war, and many of our the members of our communities may not see that, but those of you that know folks in the Guard and Reserve know that many families have been affected by what's been going on for the last decade plus. And in some cases, many times. I've got folks that have deployed 8 years in the last 13. Think about that. Being away from your family for 8 years and 13. Now think of the impacts on individuals and families. Just the other night, I welcomed home another small group from Afghanistan. And as I was in the hallway prior to our little ceremony, a very senior military guy, a command sergeant major, walked up to me with tears in his eyes and said, "I wish I never would have come back." He said, "My family doesn't even know me. They don't need me. Because I'm just a bother to them." And I put my arms around him and I told him that's not true, and you need to just take it easy, slow down. Your family's changed while you've been gone. By the way, this was his 3rd deployment. They've grown in capacity, and you need to just slow down a little bit and get reintegrated and reacquainted. And so many of the wounds that we are dealing with are wounds that are unseen. You'd look at someone and think they were completely normal, but the impacts on the brain are significant. It's believed that about a fourth of those that have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan have some form of either post-traumatic stress, which is not a death sentence, by the way, and mild traumatic brain injury from successive concussive events, something we didn't know much about a decade ago. And they can look completely normal. So this is a real challenge for us. As I've said before in forums like this, we talk about this last decade of war. Only about 10,000 have been killed. But what's unique about this war is that more than 50,000 have been wounded. And in previous wars, they would have died. Trauma medicine has developed to the point that we keep people alive until we can get them to medical treatment. And most of them live. The problem is the wounds are pretty ghastly if they're physical. And they're pretty ghastly if they're mental as well. A dear friend of mine who survived 6 concussive events made a statement that I want to share with you. But what's happened to him, he's lost his eyesight, lost his hearing, has very little motor control, falls down constantly, can't stay standing. And this man was completely capable until he was about 38 years old, and now his life has forever changed. But here's what he said, and I just want to read it because I'll mess it up if I don't. He said, "As a wounded warrior, you need to accept that this will be a lifetime battle. You need to know that this is a battle that not only you will fight, but those that love and care about you will have to fight as well. Depression will find you. It's true. It's just one of the many hurdles that you have to figure out how to jump over as you progress down your road to recovery. Have faith in a higher power you believe in. Have faith in God. Believe in yourself. In time, you'll figure things out and have a purpose in life, and in finding things to do to make you feel productive again and bring you happiness. I believe that as human beings, we're inseparably connected. What happens to one of us happens to all of us. And that's just a personal belief that I have. You may disagree, but I do believe that when people are impacted with disabilities, whether we want to believe it or not, that affects us. And as our society as a whole, it's incumbent upon us to do what we can to help those that are disabled. One of the things that you need to be aware of is that as the budgets tighten, the only discretionary money that the government has really is the Department of Defense. And so the drawdown is underway. You've heard about it. Right now, about 80,000 Army soldiers are going to be re-entering our society as private citizens. And that's just the beginning. Now think about that impact nationally in the job market. Many of these people have some disabilities. But I can think of no one I'd rather have coach my granddaughter's Little League baseball team than a guy or a gal who's been downrange and lived in what we call an extremist leadership. It's leadership in the extreme. Having been through trials and tribulations that many of us can't really fathom, and then having to work their way through to reintegrate into society. These people, we hear about the damaged veteran all the time. What I'd like to suggest is that veterans actually have a lot to add to our culture and our society. They've got a lot of experience, most of it good, in that they've learned how to handle tough situations in a very positive way. And so while the military is trying very hard, I was at Walter Reed a while back, and it's always very humbling, because when I go into those rooms and talk to those injured, wounded warriors, what do you think is the first thing they say to me? What's the first thing they want? Think about it for a minute. It's this indomitable spirit. They want to go back and get back into their unit as quickly as they can, because they have that love for their comrades, that teamwork, that desire to serve on a team. That makes them great employees. That makes them very capable. They know how to show up to work on time. They know how to get a job done and work as a team. So in the military, we're working hard with prosthetics, trying to help people learn how to operate with lost limbs. And we're working very hard to help people turn PTS into a positive, because really, if you make friends with those tough memories and don't shove them back, which is what our Vietnam era veterans ended up doing, it causes trauma for decades. But if you can make friends with that memory, get it out in front, confront it, you can turn that into a strength and be a strength in your community and your society. So to those of you that run businesses, I would just beseech you to think about veterans. They're great employees. They have a lot to offer. To those of you that are with government or other ways serving with the Columbus Community Center, I just tell you thank you. You're all part of the solution. And really, again, we're inseparably connected as a society and a community. And those that choose to bury their head in the sand and ignore issues like this get nowhere. The way we solve issues is get them out in the forefront. And so it's my hope and it's my prayer that we'll think of those who have wounds that are seen and unseen, and that we'll strive to make opportunities for them to better themselves. I have no slides, and I just thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. Thanks.
Lieutenant Fred Ross, Deputy Chief of Metro Support, which is a new division in the Salt Lake City Police Department, has served as a police officer for 24 years and knows the byways of our community, of our city, better than just about anybody. He also owns 2 different businesses in Salt Lake Awards and Apparel, and Fatheads Production. Not only is he a busy man, he's someone who understands that the ways that government, business, and community can partner for the betterment of citizens. I'm going to briefly tell you a little story, which he was going to tell, but he asked me to start it, about the film Invisible Disabilities, which he has been in on using as a training across the city and across the state for training police officers. It originated because my son and his cousin were at the park and were treated very improperly by a supervisor. And my husband and I, not being quiet citizens, raised a ruckus. And the mayor said something should be done and called the police chief. And the police chief, Chris Burbank, and Fred, who knew my son already, determined that something should be done. And between us, we made a 20-minute film, training film, which cost a lot of money, which the city supported, and it is being used statewide to train police officers. It is being used in Albuquerque, in Maryland, and other parts of the country, and I hope will grow. It's called Invisible Disabilities, and what General Burton said about invisible disabilities, this is true across all disabilities. Some are visible and some are not at all. So Officer Ross is going to talk about this training and other ways that he and police officers in Salt Lake are working with people with disabilities, visible and otherwise. Thank you, Fred Ross. Lieutenant Fred Ross.
Betsy's far too kind. She didn't give you the dirty details, and I won't give you too many of them, but that was a very, very embarrassing and sad day for those of us that wear the uniform in Salt Lake City. I received a phone call from a mutual friend of Betsy and I, and she said, "Are you aware of this?" And at the time, I wasn't aware of the situation. And she said, "Fred, you need to get involved." And this friend, I'd done several youth camps with her back in early in my career, and she knew I was willing to reach out and try to make the situation a little bit better. I'm going to give you a little context. So they were in Sugar House Park. They went into the men's restroom, and a supervisor, a sergeant, went into the restroom and observed what he thought was illegal behavior. He left, didn't interact with him at all. As Nick and Joey came out of the restroom, they were with their caretaker, and they saw the police cars, which Nick just loves police cars. Mine's just a blacked out Camry, but he thinks that's like better than Tony Stewart's car. And he loves the lights, loves the sirens. So he walked over and asked if they could look at the cars, and the supervisor can't explain his behavior, but he basically belittled them and told them if they didn't leave the park, they'd be subject to arrest. Think of what was going through their minds at that time. And Betsy, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the most of Nick's interaction with law enforcement was, as he was a student at West High School. I was the resource detective at the school, and Nick was one of the students there. And we had a pretty good rapport back then. He was one of my senior deputies, if you will, and I'll tell you what, those halls were never so safe as when Nick was on patrol. So, my understanding, of course, I wasn't in the car, but Nick had asked the question of the caregiver, hey, you know, why did all that take place? And very difficult to understand. I thought the police were there to help us, so forth and so on. So it came to my attention, so I spoke with the chief. At the time, I was a chief's executive officer, which was kind of his driver, his bodyguard, and the guy that tells them, hey, we screwed up, we got to go fix this. And that's exactly what we did. So I think the first meeting at your place was myself and Laura Jones, our public relations director. And Kit was he was heated, and I couldn't blame him. I was ready to catch one in the jaw and walk out of there with a smile on my face. He was very, very frustrated, and justly so. The next meeting was with the chief and I and Kit and Betsy. And while those of you that know Kit knows he's a seasoned attorney, and he could have filed paper after paper after paper, and we'd still be dealing with it. But they took the high road, and I blessed them for that, in that they just wanted to see change. And so over a period of months and months and months, the dialogue continued, and it was decided that we would produce this video. Betsy and folks here at the Columbus Center were very instrumental in bringing that together with Temple Grandin. So once that video was completed, the chief and I actually had the opportunity to introduce it to the Major City Chiefs Conference. And that's the 70 largest municipalities in the country, 70th largest police departments, and present it to all those chiefs. while not all of them were receptive to the training, many of them were. And I'm a firm believer that it's not a matter of if they're going to come calling, it's going to be when. They will have a situation, and then they're going to start Googling, as you talked in the last session, where's this training? And then they're going to be calling us. And we're going to say, well, you had the opportunity a few years ago, why didn't you take advantage of it? By then, the chief will probably be looking for a new job. But it's out there. We've trained a good portion of the officers in Salt Lake City, and South Salt Lake, West Valley, Sandy, and we're still trying to get the word out to even more. It was a very humbling experience to go through this project, and I think it's really enlightened a lot of officers. As you know, we encounter people in 1,000,001 different scenarios, and we're expected to be, you know, Superman. We're supposed to be the caregiver. We're expected to be everything, and every situation, unfortunately, is not even close to the same. A traffic stop is never the same. An encounter with an individual is never the same. But if we can just put that little bit of knowledge in the back of those officers' minds, there's clearly not enough mass to retain everything. But if we can just get them to think for a moment, okay, this individual may have an invisible disability, and how do I deal with them? As we've trained officers around the valley, it's amazing how many officers have come to us after and says, you know, I've got a family member, or I know somebody in this neighborhood that I patrol, and we're trying to encourage them to find out where all those people are. A number of those with disabilities, and particularly autism, they tend to walk away. So we, as a police department in Salt Lake City, are now loading their photos into our system. So the minute that we get a call to that address, that photo is going out to everybody. So it's not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. Hopefully it's just a matter of minutes before we can bring them home safely. So Betsy, I thank you dearly for taking the approach that you did. Nick is a fantastic individual, and as a result of this, it exposed me to the center here at Columbus. And we were able to, Stephanie, I forget, it's been 6-9 months ago, that after that experience, I told the chief, we need to hire a couple people from Columbus. We tend to take ourselves far too serious in the profession of law enforcement. We carry guns, we wear badges, we think we're cool, you know, we drive cars with sirens, we get to go fast occasionally, but really it's nothing, nothing even like that. We're no different than any of you. We just happen to have a little bit different training. And so I was the commander over detectives at the time, and we were extremely backlogged with our pawn database and the pawn tickets. So every time somebody goes in to pawn something at a pawn shop, they have to fill out a little card. Well, yeah, law enforcement is not real tech savvy at times, nor are the pawn shops, if any of you've ever been into a pawn shop. They're all handwritten, and we have to take them back manually and enter them into a database. And so these two individuals have not just been employed at the police department, but they've actually become very big members of our family. They attended our awards gala, and unfortunately I've been transferred and have taken over another division, but I'm looking very earnestly to hire the next one, because Celeste and I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, the two employees, I couldn't walk in my office without being made fun of. He was always trying to put whoopee cushions on my chair. I'd walk in there and my chair would be lowered all the way down. And just, I mean, that's the type of fun that we need when we're dealing with serious issues all the time. And just a fantastic individual. And all he does is he puts them in numeric order. And we learned that he takes karate. He's wheelchair bound, but he takes karate as well. And once we knew that, we immediately put him on the chief's protective detail. And that's an assignment he takes very, very serious. He doesn't get to travel with him that much, but he takes that pretty serious. So while they're to most, they're just menial tasks. To them, I think they've actually found a bigger family, and we're very, very grateful for it and hope to get somebody else. I want somebody that delivers the mail every morning is what I'm looking for. Somebody that can put a smile on all our faces, because we come to work after spending 10 hours the day before dealing with a lot of difficulties, and I want somebody that will come around, put a smile on our face, and that's kind of what we need in order for us to provide adequate service and not create a situation as Betsy described. I'm just going to give you, Stephanie and the rest of the staff here, a little credit. The chief made a bold move in Salt Lake City a couple months ago and decided to create a Metro Bureau which polices all of downtown Salt Lake City, which is economically, it's the main artery of the city. He and I have been talking about it for a long, long time, and he finally decided to make what some believe is an unpopular decision. But he made it anyway because it was the right thing to do. And those of you that work or travel downtown, you know there's a very large homeless population. The unemployment amongst them and mental illness is extremely, extremely high. That's what we're faced with, about 1,800 of them every day on the street. And when the chief decided he was traveling to Italy instead of coming here to speak, he said, or the secretary said, "You're on, Fred." And it really started to get me to think that if I could take the model that you have here down there, I'll tell you, we could really rid the homeless population of their inability to obtain employment. It's very, very similar to what you guys are doing. So Gary, if you want a challenge, there's your challenge. Help me figure that out. So
You're all going to get a copy of Invisible Disabilities, and if you need some for your company, the Columbus Community Center has copies. They've really been responsible for distributing it. Robert Chamberlain is president and CEO of Source America, which for 40 years has served the mission of creating employment for people with serious disabilities. Prior to his association with Source America, he was a deputy director of the Defense Logistics Agency, where he managed 41,000 person organization responsible for worldwide logistics support of the U.S. Armed Forces. There, too, he was an active supporter of programs for people with disabilities. Recognized as an expert in logistics, best commercial practices, and modernization of business systems, he is uniquely qualified to teach the value of diversity in employment to government and business customers alike. Please welcome Robert Chamberlain.
Well, good morning, everyone. There is a handout, I think, of these slides. Again, I am with Source America, and our job, rather than give you the mission, I'll just tell you what our job is, and it is focused on one thing: creating employment opportunities for people with significant disability. Now the slide is up there. And that last year, we had jobs on about just under 45,000 people with disabilities all over the country, directly through a program I'll mention in a couple minutes, and a total of 120,000 people with disabilities at jobs and companies, government agencies all over the country. So let me explain how this thing works and what the basic premise is, and now it should, well, no, let me tell you first. We've been talking about in these various sessions that you've had really different kinds of disabilities: physical, traumatic brain injury, autism, developmental disabilities, mental illness, all of that. Every one of those disabilities make up the workforce that we have throughout the country. This is statistically what it is. You can see that the one at the top, intellectual developmental disabilities, is the highest. Mental illness is pretty high. And then there's a whole series of physical disabilities, as well as the traumatic brain injury, which we have seen in increasing numbers as wounded warriors come into our program. But this whole program is based on three fundamental premises. And they are these. We've been talking about it, but the fact of the matter is, to make this work and to really grow jobs, you gotta have, we think, you have to have these basic premises. The first one is that the federal government and companies and state agencies and what have you, they need goods and services. It's that simple. They're going to buy them. Secondly, and this has been alluded to, said directly a couple times, people with disabilities want to work. From the time they were this high, what are you going to do when you grow up? It's all about a job. They don't just want to work. They want to work and they want to excel. Sometimes you have this, we mentioned it a little bit this morning, this balance between business, social, and all of that. But the fact is, they don't just want to work. They want to do a great job. And that's exactly the experience we've had, and that is the fundamental premise of at least the formal program we're a part of. On the one hand, the federal government wants goods and services. On the other hand, we have people who are blind and people with disabilities who bring skills to the table and can do just that. We talk about funding for the program. Essentially, there is no funding for this program, which is why Australia now has a program similar. Poland has a program similar, because regardless of which party might come in elections and so on, where the funding for the program comes from is the purchase of goods and services and a small fee off those contracts. There's a very small appropriation for a government agency that, from a government standpoint, oversees the policies of the program. The third thing is this, and really it doesn't say it on the slide, but the first word should be hard work, and I'll say that again. This does not come easily. It is hard work. When I do orientations for people, the executives that are coming in for the various agencies around the country, and I will say, how many people would like a new project that would create jobs? All the hands go up. But then I ask them again, yeah, but how many people really want to create job opportunities in a new project? And they're looking at me like, you fool. I already said yes. Yes, but that's a different ballgame to do what it takes to do to make one of these projects happen in whatever form it might be. And as far as a company is concerned, your major departments, defense department's a big supporter of ours. Why does that work? Because at the top, there is someone who has been pushing this program. We just met with somebody from Department of Homeland Security. The same thing. You have to have it from the top, and you have to have it within individual companies and organizations. Can't just put it down on paper and say, our mission is this, and we want to do this related to people with disabilities. It takes hard work and non-stop effort to make it happen and to make this grow. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, we identify federal and commercial employment opportunities. That's what my organization, Source America, does. And we have a large business development staff that is looking both in the federal sector and they're looking in the commercial sector for opportunities. Once we find those opportunities, we publicize that with the nonprofit sector. And eventually, it's a process where they have to come in with their capabilities to do it and so on. And eventually, we will select a nonprofit to perform the work. Once that happens, we assist them with the proposal, pre-implementation issues, and post-implementation support. We have a staff for that. Or we bring people in under contract, experts in all the different business lines that we're in. And we're in many, many different business lines around the country. Now, that's our operational mode, and that's what we've been doing for some time. But what we wanted to do was go beyond the operational mode. That's full-time, doing what's on that slide. So we set up an institute for Economic Empowerment. And what it's doing is it is taking a longer-term view to reduce or eliminate barriers to employment for people with disabilities. Now, we do some of it in our business development approach that I mentioned earlier, because we have people that are constantly interacting with the federal government. By the way, speaking of incentives, there is incentive to go with a small business, minority-owned and so on. That's how the contracting officers evaluate. No incentive to go with our program and employ people with disabilities. So the only way we can make it happen is through the quality of the goods and services we provide, and through the interest and support of contracting officers who have situations with people with disabilities and so on. So we've grown a procurement champion program to recognize those people. But we assist with public policy, influencing public policy related to people with disabilities, assistive technology. We have a design, we have that all over the country where we assist where someone might not be able to do a job, and we do some kind of assistive thing, and now they can. We also developed a design challenge award at the high school level and the college level. In fact, one of the winners recently was from Utah at the college level. And I always used to call it Weber, but I think it's Weber State. And by the way, I found that out before I went to the podium, fortunately. But Congressman Bishop was there, and he made the presentation. And what it's doing is it's promoting an awareness with our youth, with our high school students, with our college. And we have participation from 40 different states around the country in these different programs. We teach people with disabilities how to self-advocate. They advocate for the capabilities of people with disabilities and what a job means to them. We bring them into Washington, we train them, and then we make all kinds of Capitol Hill visits. I can go over there, and I do, to Capitol Hill, but I don't make even close to the impact that one of these individuals does who can talk to what that job did for them. And we recognize their achievements with all kinds of different awards, conferences we have, and so on. I'm not going to go through this chart, but this is the formal program that was set up initially in 1938 by some legislation. That was for people who are blind. And in 1971, it was, that NIB stands for National Industries for the Blind. In 1971, somebody said, geez, if we're doing that for people who are blind, why don't we do it for people with significant disabilities? So that's where we came along a few years later. And of course, now our side of the program is much, much bigger. And we have about 540 nonprofit agencies all over the country that are associated with us. And I think this is just a map of the United States with dots all over it, and that's where they're located. Now, so what is it? What are some of these goods and services that we do? And I put up some various pictures here and symbols. A Statue of Liberty. We do the grounds at the Statue of Liberty. We do the custodial at the Statue of Liberty. People with disabilities. And you know how long it took us to get that project? Talk about hard work, 10 years. 10 years of working with the Department of the Interior, because you want to do what with people with disabilities, huh? And now they love them, and it's working great. Oh, over on the right-hand side there, of course, it's our flag, nation's flag. We do 50% of the internment flags that unfortunately have to be used when our troops come back, deceased, but actually with any veteran who, when you go to the ceremony, they have a flag. We make those flags at 3 different facilities around the country. Internal Revenue Service, that's their symbol. There was a mention of secure document destruction here and the possible expansion of it and so on. That program started with us, with the Internal Revenue Service, doing it to the highest standards. But the concept we had in that, and we also heard about incentivizing. How do you incentivize? Well, what we did was we set up a financial assistance program with the various nonprofit agencies. And we said, I'll tell you what, we will fund those lease payments for the first 2 years, and on a sliding scale, and all the things, because if you do it for the IRS, you have to have very secure systems and so on. But here's the deal. If you're going to do it, you have to hire a business development person to develop commercial business, not just the federal business. Right now, the status of this nationwide is we have about 1,000 sites for the IRS and for the Social Security. But in the commercial world, where they went off with that incentive, we have 32,000 locations nationwide. And people are doing that work that were just, many of them standing in the corner, not communicating, and now they love that work. Passports down on the left. If you call the State Department with a question on your passport, good chance you'll be talking to one of 200 people with disabilities with a contract that one of our agencies has with the State Department. The map of the United States, we've got all kinds of things on the news about immigration, as everybody knows, but all those border stations, that's why that's there. Many of them, custodial, different services, there are people through our program that are doing the work at that. Over on the right-hand side, that is one of our troops, and that individual's holding an M16 weapon. We do the battle dress uniforms, the camouflage uniforms that you see. Whenever you see one of our troops, we do a good percentage of those, manufacture them. But the other thing is, on that M16, we manufacture a good percentage of the magazine for that M16. And I want to tell one quick story. We were talking about why should you hire these people. This is the most dedicated workforce. I went to see the quality control process that they have there in Wichita, Center Industries, where we make the magazine for the M16. It turned out it was an ice storm, a snowstorm, and all of the above. And what happened was, I ended up getting snowed in there. They closed the schools, they closed the transportation system, and so on. I did get out to Center Industries. I was going to watch 2 government inspectors and how they do the QA process, because that magazine has to be right. I got there, government inspectors couldn't make it because of the weather. There were 200 people with disabilities, not one missing. How did they get there? I don't know. But just like was said earlier in the illustration on the laundry, and by the way, we have laundry facilities that can match any of them all over this country through this program, and some not through this program, where we've assisted nonprofits to get to that. Those are some of the federal ones. I just put all these logos up here because even though we have a program that assists with business development, what happens is that the various nonprofit agencies, they form relationships. And so some of the most complex operations that are going on, and I just picked these. We could have had 5 more slides after this on this subject, but I just picked a few because a couple of them, and I'm not going to talk to all of them, but a couple of them are interesting. With Alcoa, one of the things that they do is the analysis on the engine housing on Pratt Whitney engines and so on. And they do x-rays of it. They're digitizing all of that. One of our nonprofits is doing all of that for Alcoa, and what they're also doing is they're taking those x-rays after it's successfully digitized and backed up, and they're getting the silver out of it. They're going through that process, all through a nonprofit agency down in Virginia. Well, I won't go through the rest of them, but in all cases, we are doing that work. We are doing, well, somebody mentioned Boeing, and Boeing has been a prime supporter of this program for years and way beyond this program. But that's commercial through relationship. The other one was our program, but this is just a whole series of them. Where did all this come from? Just out-of-the-box thinking in a room with the door closed. We now have several franchises, including UPS, in just a whole host of them. A pizza company, Subway just signed on, where the nonprofit can do that. You want me off the air? Okay. Incentive, entrepreneurial, I talked to that. I won't go through all those, but let me just mention Pathways to Employment, and that is giving individuals out of sheltered settings transition to work from schools, and also people on the Medicaid waiting list. A mammoth project that we are funding the payroll tax for the employers, and it's right here in Utah. And you're well familiar with it, Kyle, I think. Anyways, and let me just go to the last slide. But how do you do this? It's nice for me to say this, but how do you actually make this happen beyond just hard work? Well, part of it people are doing right here. You're reaching out, you're exploring, you're listening on what can be done. You got to get out of the comfort zone. A lot of these things, this isn't what they were doing before, but they get out of the comfort zone. Look at something from a different lens, like Henry Ford did. The automobile wasn't invented here, it was invented in Europe. He's the one that made it common and saw the vision of everyone having him. Take some risk. Boeing comes out of World War II. They're a wartime air machine company. What did they do? They went commercial. Big, big risk. Nobody knew that was going to take off. IBM is another one that saw an opportunity. They were going down, but they viewed it and they succeeded. Again, maintain nonstop effort and keep focus on the long term. Not the share price the next day, did it go up the next day or down, but the long term. So with that, I thank you very much, and I'll turn it back over.
I have one for General Burton first. Are there tools that we can use to sensitize the general population about the issues of veterans? Because, you know, there are books like 5s and 25s, which is coming out soon. I could name half a dozen. As a bookseller, there are movies. But other educational tools besides that, and then thinking about the Columbus model of training here and then sending people to the workplace with the employee, which helps to sensitize the work environment, for, among other things. Is there a way to combine, to use that with veterans, or is there a way to kind of collaborate in new ways to help with this problem?
Yeah, the effort's very disjointed. We need to do a better job of marketing and making the public aware of the problems, but also the benefits that veterans bring. And I don't think we're doing a very good job of that. We're working very hard in DOD. One of the things we are doing right is reintegration of veterans. We're doing a much better job than we did in the Vietnam era, and I'm so grateful for that. But we have a long way to go, and I think it is education-based. I think there could be more public service announcements, more marketing. We're doing a really good job. And oh, by the way, the Salt Lake Chamber and the National Chamber of Commerce have done amazing things with Hero to Hired, which really we all know that dignity comes from having a job. We've, just in Utah alone, over 5,000 jobs in the last decade through Hero to Hired. And so we're very excited about that. But we got a long way to go, Betsy, and I'm sure I didn't answer your question.
You helped on the same topic. It seems to me that education is the key to sensitizing the general population and everybody about all of these issues. And I would love some ideas either from the panel or the audience about tools we haven't heard about. We've heard about so many. But if there are tools that we don't know about, if anybody can contribute some new information, we'd love it.
And Mr. Burton could probably address this as well. When you throw out the acronym PTSD, the first thing that comes to many people's mind is Vietnam. And not to discount the military by any stretch, as my wife's facing a 6-month deployment in mid-December to Kuwait City. PTSD is extremely common among law enforcement as well. And a good portion of those that are serving now, the younger officers, are prior enlisted. They've seen the battlefield, if you will. And it's very helpful because those that are out on the street now, unlike myself, I spend most of my time in an office, but the younger officers out in the street that are going to encounter these coming back that may have some of those lingering effects of wartime, they have a better sense and a better knowledge of how to interact with them and what they're facing. It's a language in and of itself. But we have realized as of late that it's very much not talked about. PTSD is not talked about by any stretch, and we're trying to educate our officers because, you know, we've got them that are coming back that are now on the streets. If they don't know the signs, and the same thing for those that just wear the uniform every day. So it's a difficult topic, most definitely.
Hey, Rebecca, real quick, a lot's been done, a lot of in-service education over the years, and it's really been good. One of the problems that we are concerned with is confrontations with veterans and law enforcement. And I think a lot's been done on the law enforcement level to educate officers. And Lieutenant brings up a great point that post-traumatic stress is simply fear from a traumatic event that you had no control over. That can happen to anybody if you come upon a car accident. Some of these officers have PTS. Many of our people do. And just awareness and understanding going into those types of situations is so important. So I'm very encouraged that a lot's been done over the last 10 years to educate officers and military people on how to act in those situations.
I just want to say, in finishing, that Columbus Community Center is the place where people come together in these incredible partnerships. I mean, without you, I don't know how all of these people could come together. So thank you, and thank all of you.